Welcome to Cosmo Publishing. You just tuned yourself to the coolest place to learn all about self-publishing. We are a turnkey quality service provider, from interior formatting to custom covers and everything in between, including book marketing and advertising. It is the company that books a lot.
Welcome to the Cosmo Publishing Podcast. I'm your host, Gürhan, co-founder of Cosmo Publishing and Cosmodio books. Together, we work closely with independent authors at every stage of their publishing journey, from first-time writers to experienced authors building global catalogs. Our focus is always the same: clarity, quality, and long-term publishing strategies that are grounded in real-world experience. At Cosmo Publishing, we support authors with editing, formatting, cover design, distribution, and marketing systems designed for sustainability rather than short-term hype. Through Cosmodio books, we help authors expand their reach across platforms and formats, turning individual books into lasting assets. Today's episode is about a topic that attracts a lot of attention and just as much misunderstanding: scaling to six figures as an independent author. When people hear about six-figure author income, they often imagine overnight success, viral moments, or rare exceptions. What they don't see are the years of experimentation, refinement, and quiet consistency behind those numbers. In this episode, we're going to look past the headlines and talk about what scaling actually looks like in real author careers. We'll explore the patterns successful indie authors share, the systems they build, and the mindset shifts that allow income to grow without burning out creativity. This is not about shortcuts or guarantees. It's about understanding how sustainable growth really happens in self-publishing. Whether six figures is your goal, or you simply want to build steady, meaningful income from your work, this episode will help you see the bigger picture and approach growth with clarity instead of pressure. Let's start with what scaling really means in author careers. When authors hear the phrase scaling to six figures, it often triggers a mix of excitement and pressure. The term sounds dramatic, almost like a finish line that separates real authors from everyone else. In practice, scaling is far less glamorous and far more grounded than most people expect. Understanding what scaling actually means in real author careers is the first step toward approaching growth without distortion or burnout. Scaling does not mean selling more books once. It means building a structure where income can grow without requiring a proportional increase in effort every time. In author terms, scaling is not about one breakout title or one viral moment. It is about creating repeatable outcomes through consistency, systems, and reader trust. Many successful indie authors describe their early years as uneven. Sales fluctuated, momentum came and went. What changed was not talent, but perspective. Scaling began when they stopped asking, how do I make this one book succeed, and started asking, how do I build a body of work that supports itself over time? This shift is subtle but powerful. Instead of chasing spikes, authors focused on smoothing income. Instead of obsessing over launch day, they paid attention to what happened after. Instead of constantly changing direction, they refined what already worked. Scaling also requires redefining success. Six figures is not a magic number, it is a symbol of sustainability. For some authors, it represents replacing a full-time income. For others, it means flexibility, security, or creative freedom. What matters is not the number itself, but what the income supports. Another misunderstanding is the idea that scaling requires constant growth at all costs. In reality, many authors who scale successfully reduce complexity over time. They simplify genres, streamline production, and limit distractions. Growth comes from clarity, not chaos. Scaling also happens gradually. Income often grows in layers. A first book earns modestly. A second book improves retention. A third book creates momentum. Over time, small monthly gains stack. What looks like sudden success from the outside is usually the result of patient accumulation. It is also important to understand that scaling does not eliminate effort. Writing, publishing, and marketing still require work. What changes is efficiency. Systems replace improvisation. Decisions become faster. Energy is spent where results are most likely. Another key element of scaling is predictability. Authors who reach higher income levels often talk about knowing roughly what to expect from a new release. That predictability comes from experience, audience understanding, and consistent execution. Scaling reduces guesswork. Scaling also affects emotional experience. Early in a career, results feel personal. Wins feel euphoric. Losses feel devastating. As systems solidify, emotions stabilize. Income becomes information rather than validation. Now, this emotional steadiness is part of sustainability. There is also a myth that scaling requires sacrificing creativity. Many authors fear that focusing on income will dilute their voice. In practice, stable income often creates more creative freedom. When financial pressure decreases, authors can make intentional choices rather than reactive ones. Scaling is not about doing everything. It is about doing the right things repeatedly. Successful indie authors are not necessarily more talented or more productive. They are more consistent. They build on what works instead of reinventing themselves with every book. It is also worth noting that scaling looks different at different stages. What works early may not work later. Scaling is adaptive. It evolves alongside the author's goals, energy, and life circumstances. Understanding scaling as a long-term process rather than a destination removes unnecessary pressure. It reframes growth as something that can be built steadily rather than chased desperately. In the next section, we'll look at the common patterns shared by authors who have successfully scaled their income and how those patterns reveal more about process than luck. Let's analyze the common patterns behind six-figure indie success, shall we? When you look closely at indie authors who have scaled to six figures, one thing becomes clear very quickly. Their success is rarely the result of a single lucky break. Instead, it is the outcome of repeated patterns applied consistently over time. These patterns are not glamorous, but they are reliable. One of the most consistent patterns is focus. Successful indie authors tend to narrow their attention instead of spreading it thin. Rather than writing in multiple unrelated genres, changing branding constantly, or chasing every new trend, they commit to a clear direction. This focus helps readers understand what the author offers and builds recognition more quickly. Another shared pattern is commitment to finishing and releasing books. Six-figure authors are rarely perfectionists who endlessly revise one manuscript. They prioritize completion and forward momentum. This does not mean they ignore quality. It means they balance quality with progress. Finished books create opportunities. Unfinished projects do not. Series play a major role in many success stories. While not every six-figure author writes series, a large percentage do. Series create continuity, increase reader retention, and turn one sale into multiple sales. Authors who scale often describe the moment they shifted from standalone thinking to series thinking as a turning point. Reader trust is another critical pattern. Successful authors deliver a consistent experience. Readers know what they are getting when they pick up the next book. This consistency builds confidence and reduces friction in buying decisions. Trust turns casual readers into loyal ones. Six-figure authors also pay attention to data without becoming obsessed with it. They track sales, read through pricing performance, and advertising results, but they do not panic over short-term fluctuations. Data informs decisions. It does not dictate self-worth. Another common pattern is iterative improvement. Successful authors do not expect to get everything right the first time. They revise covers, refine descriptions, adjust pricing, and improve marketing over time. Each release is treated as both a product and a learning opportunity. Progress comes from refinement rather than reinvention. Marketing among six-figure authors is usually simple and repeatable. Instead of chasing every platform, they choose a few channels that suit their audience and temperament. They develop routines rather than campaigns. Marketing becomes part of the workflow, not a stressful interruption. Time management also stands out. Authors who scale protect their writing time. They build schedules that support consistency rather than intensity. Burnout is avoided not through motivation, but through structure. Writing becomes a habit rather than a heroic effort. Another pattern is realistic expectation setting. Successful authors understand that growth is uneven. They expect quiet periods. They anticipate learning curves. Because of this, they are less likely to abandon strategies prematurely. Patience is treated as a skill. Six-figure authors also tend to think in catalogs rather than individual titles. They understand that each book strengthens the whole. Older books are optimized, refreshed, and supported. Backlist is treated as an asset, not an afterthought. Collaboration is another shared trait. While these authors are independent, they are rarely isolated. They work with editors, designers, marketers, and peers. They seek feedback and perspective. This prevents tunnel vision and accelerates growth. Another important pattern is emotional resilience. Successful authors learn to separate creative identity from market response. Bad months do not define them. Good months do not inflate expectations unrealistically. Emotional steadiness allows long-term focus. Six-figure success also tends to come with clear boundaries. Authors learn what not to do. They say no to distractions, unaligned opportunities, and strategies that do not serve their goals. Focus is protected deliberately. It is also worth noting that many six-figure authors redefine success along the way. Income goals evolve. What begins as a financial target often becomes a measure of freedom, flexibility, or creative autonomy. Scaling becomes a means, not an end. The most important pattern of all is persistence. Almost every successful indie author can point to moments where quitting would have been reasonable. They continued anyway, not blindly, but thoughtfully. They adjusted, learned, and stayed engaged. These patterns are not secrets. They are behaviors. They do not require luck. They require consistency, patience, and willingness to learn. In the next section, we'll examine why one book almost never builds a six-figure income and how shifting focus from single titles to ecosystems changes everything. In this section, I am going to talk about a pitfall that most new authors fall into. Let's call it a one-book wonder and talk about why one book rarely builds a six-figure income. One of the most persistent myths in publishing is the idea that a single book can change everything. Many first-time authors, and even experienced ones, secretly hope that through one powerful story, one perfectly written guide, or one well-timed release will unlock long-term financial success. While rare exceptions exist, this expectation is one of the biggest obstacles to scaling income sustainably. In reality, one book almost never builds a six-figure income on its own. The primary reason is simple leverage. A single book gives a reader only one buying decision. Once that decision is made, the relationship often ends. Even if the book is excellent, there is nowhere else for the reader to go. No continuation, no deeper engagement, no compounding value. The ceiling is low. Successful indie authors understand that income scales through accumulation, not singular impact. Each additional book increases the surface area through which readers can discover the author. More importantly, it increases the depth of the relationship once discovery happens. Another limitation of relying on one book is marketing efficiency. Marketing a single title means every effort resets to zero. Each campaign must convince readers from scratch. When authors have multiple books, especially connected ones, marketing becomes more efficient. One ad, one recommendation, or one review can lead to multiple purchases instead of one. Reader behavior supports this reality. Most readers who enjoy a book want more of the same experience. When they finish a strong book and discover there is nothing else available, momentum stops. When they finish a strong book and see several more waiting, trust converts into action. This is why series dominate scalable income. Series create continuity. They reduce friction. They turn curiosity into commitment. Even short series outperform standalone books in long-term earnings because they allow read-through where one purchase leads naturally to the next. Standalone books can still be part of a scalable strategy, but rarely in isolation. Authors who scale with standalone titles usually connect them through themes, branding, or audience focus. The key is creating a reason for readers to stay. Another factor is algorithmic behavior. Platforms reward consistency and engagement over time. A single book has limited ability to generate sustained signals. Multiple books create repeated interactions. Each new release refreshes attention across the catalog. This ongoing activity keeps books visible longer. There is also the issue of learning curves. Authors grow with each book. Writing improves, marketing becomes clearer, audience understanding deepens. If an author stops after one book, growth stalls at its earliest stage. Scaling requires iteration. Financial reality also matters. Even a well-performing single book has a natural limit. Pricing, market size, and reader demand all cap potential. Multiple books allow income streams to overlap. While one book may fluctuate, others stabilize the total. Another overlooked element is risk distribution. Depending on one book concentrates emotional and financial pressure. If it underperforms, confidence takes a hit. With multiple books, risk is spread. No single title carries the full weight of success or failure. Authors who scale often describe a moment when they stopped treating each book as a verdict. They began treating books as contributions. Each release mattered, but none defined them entirely. This shift reduced pressure and increased productivity. It is also important to address the emotional attachment to the breakout book fantasy. This fantasy often delays progress. Authors wait for the perfect idea instead of finishing the next book. In practice, progress comes from momentum, not perfection. Six-figure authors rarely point to one book as the reason they succeeded. They point to catalogs, to consistency, to systems built over time. The income came after the infrastructure was in place. This does not mean every book must be part of a long series. It means every book should belong to a larger vision. Whether through series, shared audience, or thematic cohesion, books should support each other. When authors release book after book with intention, income stops being dependent on luck. It becomes responsive to effort and learning. Scaling happens when authors stop asking, "Will this book succeed?" and start asking, "How does this book strengthen the whole?" In the next section, we'll explore how series, read-through, and reader retention work together to create the compounding effect that makes six-figure income possible. Okay, not many people focus on these three topics, so I thought it would be a good idea. We are going to talk about series, read-through, and reader retention. If there is one structural element that appears again and again in six-figure indie author careers, it is this combination: series, read-through, and reader retention. These three elements work together to create compounding growth, and understanding how they function explains why so many successful authors prioritize them early. A series is more than multiple books with shared characters or settings. It is a promise to the reader. When a reader starts a series, they are not just buying one book, they are stepping into an ongoing experience, and this changes buying behavior dramatically. With standalone books, every purchase is a fresh decision. The reader evaluates the cover, description, reviews, and price each time. With a series, that evaluation happens once. If the first book delivers, the rest of the series benefits from that trust. This is where read-through comes in. Read-through refers to the percentage of readers who move from one book in a series to the next. High read-through means that most readers who finish book 1 continue to book 2, then book 3, and so on. This creates exponential value from a single point of entry. For example, if one reader buys a standalone book, the transaction ends there. If one reader buys the first book in a series and continues through 5 books, that single reader represents 5 sales instead of 1. Scaling income becomes much easier when each new reader has the potential to generate multiple purchases. Successful indie authors pay close attention to read-through because it determines how efficiently marketing converts into revenue. When read-through is strong, advertising costs drop relative to earnings. One promotional effort feeds multiple sales. When read-through is weak, scaling becomes expensive and unstable. Reader retention is the deeper layer beneath read-through. Retention is about whether readers stay with the author beyond one series or one release. Retained readers buy future books, recommend the author to others, and become part of a long-term audience. Retention is built through consistency. Readers need to know what kind of experience they will get from an author. This does not mean repetition or lack of creativity. It means reliability in tone, quality, and delivery. Readers return when expectations are met. Series naturally support retention because they extend engagement over time. Readers spend more hours with the author's voice, characters, or ideas. Familiarity builds connection. Connection builds loyalty. Another reason series scale well is discoverability. Platforms often recommend later books in a series to readers who engaged with earlier ones. Reviews accumulate across multiple titles. Visibility increases organically as the catalog grows. Pricing strategy also plays a role. Many successful authors price the first book in a series lower to reduce entry friction. Once readers are invested, they are more willing to pay standard prices for later books. This strategy increases volume without sacrificing overall earnings. Series do not need to be long to be effective. Even trilogies can create strong read-through. What matters is cohesion and momentum. Readers should feel pulled forward, not stalled. It is also important to understand that series work best when planned intentionally. Successful authors think about arcs, pacing, and continuity early. Cliffhangers, unresolved questions, or emotional hooks encourage continuation. However, manipulation without payoff damages trust. Balance is key. Nonfiction authors also use series effectively. A sequence of related topics, a progressive learning path, or a branded collection can function like a series. The principle remains the same. Readers want continuity and progression. Reader retention also extends beyond books. Authors who scale often build direct connections through mailing lists or communities. This allows readers to stay engaged between releases and strengthens long-term loyalty. Retention is not only about content, it is about relationship. Another important factor is clarity. Readers should always know where to start and what comes next. Confusing series order or inconsistent branding breaks momentum. Successful authors remove friction at every step. Series, read-through, and retention transform publishing from a sequence of isolated events into a system. Each new book strengthens the previous ones. Each new reader adds value beyond a single sale. This compounding effect is why series are so powerful. They turn effort into leverage. They reward consistency. They make growth sustainable instead of exhausting. Authors who scale to six figures rarely do so by selling more copies of one book. They do it by creating pathways that guide readers deeper and keep them there. In the next section, we'll look at another critical component of scaling, building systems that support growth without requiring constant hustle or burnout. I am sure everybody would like to know about how successful authors work smarter. In short, systems, not hustle. One of the biggest misconceptions about scaling to six figures is the belief that it requires working nonstop. Many authors imagine successful indie careers as the result of constant hustle, endless marketing, and relentless output. In reality, most authors who scale sustainably do the opposite. They rely on systems, not sheer effort. A system is any repeatable process that reduces decision fatigue and saves time. Successful authors build systems for writing, publishing, marketing, and even thinking. These systems allow them to produce consistent results without burning out. Writing systems are often the first to develop. Scaled authors rarely wait for inspiration. They write on schedules that fit their lives. Some write daily, others weekly, but the key is predictability. Writing becomes a habit, not a negotiation. This consistency makes output reliable. Publishing systems follow closely behind. Instead of reinventing the wheel for every book, successful authors reuse workflows. Editing stages are defined. Design processes are standardized. File preparation follows the same checklist each time. This reduces errors and speeds up production. Marketing systems are where many authors see the biggest shift. Early on, marketing feels chaotic. Authors try everything, everywhere, all at once. Scaled authors narrow their focus. They choose a few marketing channels that work and turn them into routines. For example, instead of launching new campaigns constantly, authors may run the same ad structures with small adjustments, or they may schedule regular content rather than posting randomly. Marketing becomes maintenance, not panic. Another critical system is decision-making. Authors who scale learn which decisions matter and which do not. They stop overthinking minor choices and save energy for strategic ones. This mental efficiency is often overlooked, but it is essential for longevity. Systems also support delegation. When processes are clear, tasks can be handed off more easily. Editors, designers, and assistants can step in without confusion. This does not remove the author from the process. It frees the author to focus on what only they can do. Time management improves dramatically once systems are in place. Scaled authors often protect specific time blocks for writing and creative work. Administrative tasks are batched. Interruptions are minimized. This structure reduces stress and increases output without extending work hours. Another benefit of systems is emotional stability. When outcomes depend on repeatable processes rather than heroic effort, pressure decreases. Authors stop tying their self-worth to daily results. Trust shifts from luck to structure. Importantly, systems are flexible. Successful authors refine them over time. What works at one stage may change later. Systems evolve alongside goals and capacity. The key is having a framework that can adapt. Hustle-driven approaches often fail because they are unsustainable. They rely on motivation, which fluctuates. Systems rely on structure, which persists. Scaled authors understand that energy is finite. Systems protect it. Another overlooked aspect is recovery. Authors who scale long-term build rest into their systems. Breaks are planned, not reactive. This prevents burnout and allows creativity to regenerate. It is also worth noting that systems do not eliminate creativity. They support it. When logistical chaos is removed, mental space opens. Writing becomes more enjoyable. Publishing feels manageable. Many six-figure authors report that scaling became easier once they stopped chasing growth and started refining processes. Income increased not because they did more, but because they did less better. Systems turn effort into leverage. They allow authors to grow without sacrificing health, creativity, or clarity. This is why successful indie authors often appear calm rather than frantic. Their work is supported by structure. In the next section, we'll explore how marketing can scale alongside these systems without becoming overwhelming or consuming the author's entire life. Let's focus on one of the most important factors in an author's life, marketing that scales without burning you out. Marketing is often the point where many promising indie author careers stall, not because marketing does not work, but because it is approached in a way that drains energy, confidence, and creative focus. Authors who scale to six figures almost always change how they think about marketing before they change how much they do. The first shift is understanding that scalable marketing is quiet, not loud. It does not rely on constant posting, endless launches, or being visible everywhere at once. Instead, it relies on a few channels that compound over time and continue working even when the author is not actively pushing. Successful indie authors usually limit their marketing ecosystem. They choose one or two primary discovery engines and build depth there. This might be advertising, a mailing list, or a single social platform that aligns with their audience. The goal is not maximum reach, but consistent reach. Another key principle is separation between creative energy and marketing energy. Authors who burn out often try to market with the same emotional intensity they use to write. Scaled authors treat marketing as operational, not personal. Campaigns are tested, adjusted, or paused without emotional attachment. Automation plays a significant role. Scalable marketing often includes automated sequences, scheduled content, and evergreen campaigns. These systems reduce the need for constant decision-making. Marketing continues in the background while the author writes the next book. Advertising, when used correctly, is a common tool among six-figure authors, not because it is glamorous, but because it is measurable and controllable. Ads are treated as experiments, not gambles. Small budgets are tested. Data is observed calmly. What works is expanded. What does not is discarded. Another element of sustainable marketing is realistic pacing. Authors who scale understand that visibility builds gradually. They do not expect instant results from new efforts. They allow time for learning curves. This patience prevents discouragement and reactive behavior. Content marketing is also approached strategically. Instead of creating new content constantly, successful authors often repurpose. One idea becomes multiple pieces. Effort is multiplied rather than repeated. This keeps output manageable. Reader-focused marketing is another common trait. Scaled authors speak to a specific reader, not a general audience. Messaging is clear and consistent. This reduces noise and increases relevance. Marketing becomes easier when the audience is defined. Importantly, six-figure authors protect their boundaries. They know when to stop tweaking, checking, or reacting. Marketing tasks are scheduled. Metrics are reviewed at set intervals. Constant monitoring is avoided. This containment preserves mental health. Another overlooked factor is alignment with personality. Some authors enjoy writing newsletters. Others prefer ads. Some like occasional social interaction. Others prefer behind-the-scenes systems. Sustainable marketing matches temperament. Forced strategies rarely last. Marketing also becomes easier as catalogs grow. Each new book strengthens the others. Ads become more efficient. Lists convert better. This is why early marketing feels hard and later marketing feels lighter. Scaled authors understand this and do not judge early effort too harshly. It is also important to let go of the idea that marketing must feel exciting. Often, the most effective marketing feels boring. Repetition works. Familiarity builds trust. Drama is not required. Authors who scale without burnout treat marketing as part of the publishing infrastructure, not a daily performance. They design systems that run rather than campaigns that demand constant attention. Ultimately, marketing that scales is marketing that respects the author's energy. It supports creativity instead of competing with it. When marketing feels manageable, authors stay in the game long enough for results to compound. In the next section, we'll look at the mindset shifts that allow authors to grow into higher income levels without losing perspective, balance, or creative fulfillment. Another important point in an author's life. Let's talk about the mindset shifts that support long-term growth. Scaling to six figures is not only a structural or strategic process, it is also a psychological one. Many indie authors have the skills, opportunities, and even early traction needed to grow, but remain stuck because their mindset has not yet caught up with the demands of long-term expansion. The authors who scale sustainably tend to share a set of mindset shifts that support growth instead of resisting it. One of the first shifts is moving from outcome obsession to process trust. Early in a career, results feel urgent. Sales numbers are checked constantly. Visibility feels like validation. Successful authors learn to shift attention away from daily outcomes and toward the quality and consistency of their actions. They understand that results lag behind effort and that obsessing over short-term performance rarely improves it. Another critical shift involves identity. Many authors subconsciously identify as new, unknown, or not ready yet. These identities can become self-limiting. Authors who scale begin to see themselves as professionals in progress. This does not mean arrogance. It means taking their work seriously enough to invest, plan, and commit long-term. Patience is another defining mindset shift. Six-figure careers are rarely built quickly. Authors who scale accept delayed gratification as part of the process. They stop expecting each book to dramatically outperform the last. Instead, they look for incremental improvement across the catalog. This steadiness reduces emotional volatility and keeps momentum intact. A related shift is learning to tolerate uncertainty. Publishing income fluctuates, algorithms change, reader behavior evolves. Authors who need certainty often react impulsively to normal variation. Authors who scale learn to sit with uncertainty without panicking. They evaluate trends over time rather than reacting to isolated data points. Another important mindset shift is separating self-worth from productivity. Early-stage authors often equate output with value. If they are not writing or releasing constantly, they feel behind. Successful authors learn to respect cycles. Rest, reflection, and recalibration are treated as part of the work, not as failures of discipline. Long-term growth also requires reframing mistakes. Instead of viewing missteps as personal shortcomings, scaled authors see them as feedback from the system. A poorly performing book is not a verdict, it is information. This reframing allows authors to adjust strategy without losing confidence. Comparison is another mental trap that authors who scale learn to step away from. They stop measuring themselves against others with different genres, markets, or life circumstances. Comparison creates urgency without clarity. Successful authors focus inward, tracking progress against their own goals and past performance. Another mindset shift involves money. Many authors carry discomfort around earning, charging, or scaling income. These beliefs can create subconscious resistance to growth. Authors who scale work through these tensions. They learn to see income as support for their work, not a compromise of integrity. Boundaries also play a role. Scaled authors learn when to say no. They decline opportunities that do not align with their goals. They protect writing time. They avoid strategies that drain energy without meaningful return. Growth requires subtraction as much as addition. Flexibility is another defining trait. Authors who scale do not cling rigidly to one identity or strategy. They allow themselves to evolve. Genres shift. Formats expand. Approaches change. Adaptability keeps careers relevant and resilient. Perhaps the most important mindset shift is long-term commitment. Authors who scale decide early that they are building a career, not chasing a moment. This decision changes behavior. Short-term setbacks lose their power. Consistency becomes easier. Persistence becomes natural. Six-figure success is rarely about working harder than everyone else. It is about thinking differently about time, value, and growth. Mindset does not replace strategy, but it determines whether strategy is applied consistently enough to matter. In the final section, we'll explore how successful indie authors redefine success itself and how choosing a personal version of six figures creates freedom rather than pressure. Let's finish up this podcast with redefining success and choosing your own version of six figures. As authors move closer to scaling their income, one of the most important shifts they make is redefining what success actually means to them. Six figures is often treated as a universal benchmark, but in practice it represents very different things to different people. Authors who scale sustainably are not chasing a number in isolation. They are building a life and career that the number is meant to support. For some authors, six figures represent financial stability. It means paying bills comfortably, reducing stress, and having predictability. For others, it represents freedom, the ability to choose when to work, where to live, or how much time to spend on creative projects. For some, it is about validation. For others, it is about independence. Problems arise when authors adopt someone else's definition of success without questioning it. Social media often presents six figures as proof of legitimacy or superiority. This framing creates pressure and comparison rather than clarity. Authors who scale successfully learn to step away from this external narrative and define success internally. Another important aspect of redefining success is understanding trade-offs. Higher income often comes with higher responsibility, more releases, more systems, more decision-making. Successful authors consciously decide how much growth they actually want. Some choose to stop scaling once their needs are met. Others continue building larger operations. Both choices are valid. Redefining success also means recognizing that income is not the only metric that matters. Creative satisfaction, mental health, flexibility, and sustainability all contribute to long-term fulfillment. Authors who ignore these factors may reach financial goals, but feel disconnected or burned out. Authors who include them build careers they can maintain. Many six-figure authors describe a moment when they stopped chasing visibility and started prioritizing alignment. They chose projects that fit their strengths. They focused on audiences they enjoyed serving. They simplified their strategies. This alignment often led to better results with less stress. Another key element is perspective. Income fluctuates. Some years are strong, others are quieter. Authors who define success too narrowly struggle during slower periods. Authors who define success broadly remain steady. They see progress in skill, catalog depth, and audience connection even when numbers dip. Choosing your own version of six figures also involves boundaries. Authors learn when to say no to opportunities that do not serve their vision. Not every collaboration, trend, or platform deserves attention. Growth becomes intentional rather than reactive. It is also important to recognize that goals evolve. What feels ambitious at one stage may feel limiting later. Successful authors revisit their definitions regularly. They adjust based on life changes, energy levels, and priorities. Flexibility keeps success meaningful. Another overlooked factor is gratitude. Authors who scale often talk about appreciating the journey as much as the milestone. They remember earlier stages, quieter months, and learning curves. This appreciation grounds them and reduces anxiety about maintaining numbers. Redefining success also removes fear. When success is personal rather than performative, authors feel less pressure to constantly prove themselves. They take creative risks. They experiment thoughtfully. They trust their systems. Ultimately, scaling to six figures is not about crossing a finish line. It is about building a structure that supports your work and your life over time. The number itself is a byproduct of clarity, consistency, and commitment. Authors who choose their own version of success are more likely to enjoy it when they reach it. They are also more likely to keep it. That is the real difference between chasing six figures and building a six-figure career.
Welcome to Cosmo Publishing. You just tuned yourself to the coolest place to learn all about self-publishing. We are a turnkey quality service provider, from interior formatting to custom covers and everything in between, including book marketing and advertising. It is the company that books a lot.